She was pregnant, married, and believed she had a perfect family until her mother in law decided that her unborn child was not good enough. She was thrown out of the house with nowhere to go. But the woman they rejected came back stronger than anyone expected.
Welcome to Kashi's Stories, a place where emotions come alive, secrets are revealed, and every story carries a lesson. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more unforgettable stories. Now, let's begin.
Amara always believed marriage was supposed to be the beginning of a beautiful journey. When she met Michael, she never imagined that one day she would be fighting to keep the family she had sacrificed everything for. Michael was different from the men Amara had met before. He was kind, patient, hardworking, and most importantly, he loved her for who she was. When they first started dating, everyone around Amara could see how happy she was. Michael treated her like a queen. He called her every morning before work. He checked on her every night before sleeping. He made her feel safe. After 2 years of dating, Michael finally proposed. Amara cried when she saw the ring, not because of the jewelry, but because she believed she had found someone who would stand beside her forever. Their wedding day was one of the happiest days of her life. Family and friends gathered to celebrate them. Amara looked at Michael and smiled. She believed she was entering a new chapter filled with love, happiness, and peace. But there was one person who did not share her excitement: Michael's mother, Mrs. Johnson. From the first day Amara met her, she noticed something was different. Mrs. Johnson was polite, but her smile never reached her eyes. She always found small reason to criticize Amara. "You don't cook like the women in our family. Your dressing is not how a married woman should dress. You need to learn how to keep a home." At first, Amara ignored the comments. She told herself that adjusting to a new family would take time. She respected Mrs. Johnson because she was Michael's mother. She believed that with patience and kindness, they would eventually develop a good relationship. But she was wrong. A few months after the wedding, Amara discovered she was pregnant. The day she told Michael, his happiness was impossible to hide. He lifted her into his arms and smiled. "We are going to be parents." Amara laughed through tears. It was everything she had prayed for. When they told Mrs. Johnson the news, Michael expected excitement. Instead, there was silence. Mrs. Johnson looked at Amara's stomach and forced a smile. "That is good news." But something about her voice felt different. Michael didn't notice. He was too happy, but Amara noticed, and deep down, she wondered why. As months passed, Mrs. Johnson became more interested in the pregnancy, but not in the way Amara expected. She constantly asked questions. "Have you gone for the scan? Did the doctor say anything about the baby? Are you sure everything is fine?" At first, Amara thought she was just being concerned, until one evening she overheard Mrs. Johnson talking to one of her friends on the phone. "My son needs a boy." The words made Amara stop walking. She stood quietly near the door. Mrs. Johnson continued, "A girl is fine, but the family name must continue." Amara's heart sank. She touched her stomach gently. She hadn't even given birth yet, but already her child was being judged. That night, she told herself not to worry. Michael loved her. Michael would never allow anyone to make her feel less important. At least, that was what she believed. A few weeks later, the family went for a pregnancy scan. Michael held Amara's hand throughout the appointment. When the doctor smiled, everyone looked up. "Congratulations, you are expecting a healthy baby." Michael smiled, but before he could ask anything else, Mrs. Johnson quickly interrupted. "Doctor, can you tell if it is a boy?" The doctor looked at the report. "The baby is still developing. We cannot be completely certain yet." Mrs. Johnson's face changed. She looked disappointed. On their way home, Michael was still excited. He talked about buying baby clothes. He talked about decorating the baby's room, but Mrs. Johnson remained quiet. That silence worried Amara. Over the next few months, the pressure increased. Mrs. Johnson started making comments that hurt. You know, women in our family usually give birth to son. My husband was the first male child, and Michael must continue that tradition. Amara tried not to respond. She didn't want conflict. She only wanted peace. But one day, while preparing dinner, Mrs. Johnson said something that changed everything. You should pray very hard. Amara looked confused. For what? Mrs. Johnson looked directly at her. For a boy. A cold feeling moved through Amara. She placed her hand on her stomach. My child will be loved whether it is a boy or girl, Mrs. Johnson's expression added. That is easy for you to say. Amara was shocked. Before she could reply, Michael entered the room. The conversation immediately ended, but the damage had already been done. From that day, Amara began noticing something. Mrs. Johnson was not waiting to welcome a grandchild. She was waiting for a grandson, and if she didn't get what she wanted, Amara feared she would never accept a child. What Amara did not know was that this was only the beginning, because soon the truth about her baby's gender will bring out a side of Mrs. Johnson nobody had ever seen before, and it will change Amara's life forever. After that day, Amara tried her best to avoid conflict. She focused on her pregnancy. She focused on staying healthy. And most importantly, she focused on preparing for the arrival of her baby. Michael remained the loving husband he had always been. Every evening, he came home with something for the baby, a small toy, a cute outfit, or sometimes just a smile and a reminder that he was excited to become a father. Whether we have a boy or a girl, this child will be loved, Michael always said. Those words gave Amara comfort, but Mrs. Johnson felt differently. The closer Amara got to her due date, the more impatient her mother-in-law became. She started spending more time talking to relatives about the importance of having a male child. Michael is my only son, she would say. The family name must continue. Amara heard this word repeatedly, but she kept quiet. She didn't want her marriage to suffer because of arguments with her husband's mother. She believed that when the baby arrived, Mrs. Johnson would finally understand. She believed holding a grandchild would change everything, but she was wrong. One afternoon, Mrs. Johnson visited Amara's room while she was arranging baby's clothes. The room was filled with tiny dresses, blankets, and gifts. Mrs. Johnson looked around, then she noticed something. Most of the clothes were pink. Her expression immediately changed. Why are there so many girls' clothes? Amara smiled. I just bought some things I liked. The baby will look beautiful in anything. Mrs. Johnson picked up a small pink dress. You are already preparing for a girl? Amara looked confused. I don't know the baby's gender yet. Mrs. Johnson dropped the dress. You should be praying instead of buying things. Amara's smile disappeared. Praying for what? Mrs. Johnson looked at her seriously. You know exactly what I mean. The words hurt, but Amara stayed calm. This baby is a blessing no matter what. Mrs. Johnson shook her head. You are young. You don't understand how important a son is. Amara wanted to reply. She wanted to defend herself, but she remembered Michael's advice. Ignore her, she will come around. So she stayed silent, but inside her heart was breaking. A few weeks later, Michael received an unexpected work opportunity. His company needed him to travel for an important project. It was supposed to be for only a few months. Before leaving, Michael held Amara close. I hate leaving you during this time. Amara smiled. We will be fine. She believed him. She believed everything would be okay. But the moment Michael left, Mrs. Johnson changed. The sweet mother-in-law she pretended to be disappeared. The criticism became worse. The insults became louder, and Amara started realizing something frightening. Mrs. Johnson was no longer hiding her true feelings. One evening, While Amara was preparing dinner, Mrs. Johnson received a phone call. After ending the call, she looked at Amara. The scan result came. Amara froze. What results? Mrs. Johnson smiled slightly. The baby's gender. Amara's heart started beating faster. She had not told anyone she went for another scan, but Mrs. Johnson already knew. And the look on her face told Amara something was wrong. For the first time, Amara felt afraid because she knew whatever the result was, it would determine how Mrs. Johnson treated her from that moment forward. Amara stood frozen in the kitchen. The baby's gender, the words repeated in her mind. She looked at Mrs. Johnson's face, searching for any sign of happiness, but there was none, only curiosity and something else, something that felt like fear. How did you know there was another scan? Amara asked quietly. Mrs. Johnson ignored the question. Instead, she walked closer. The doctor confirmed it, didn't he? Amara swallowed hard. She already knew where this conversation was going. Mrs. Johnson, why does it matter so much? Her mother-in-law stared at her. Because this family has expectations. Those words hurt more than Amara expected. She placed her hand over her stomach. My baby is not a disappointment. Mrs. Johnson looked away. We will see. That night, Amara could not sleep. She lay beside an empty space where Michael usually slept and stared at the ceiling. She missed him. She wished he was there. She wished she could tell him everything, but she didn't want to create problems between him and his mother. She kept hoping things would change. She kept hoping Mrs. Johnson would accept her child. The next morning, Mrs. Johnson received a call. Amara was walking past the living room when she heard her name. Yes, she is carrying a girl. Amara stopped. Her heart dropped. Mrs. Johnson continued speaking. I don't know what will happen if she gives birth to another girl. Another girl. Those words felt like an attack on her unborn child. Amara quietly walked away before Mrs. Johnson noticed her. She went into her room and cried, not because she was having a daughter. She was actually happy, but because someone was already making her child feel unwanted before she was even born. Days passed and Mrs. Johnson became colder. She stopped asking about Amara's health. She stopped helping with preparation. She barely spoke to her. Whenever Amara tried to have a conversation, Mrs. Johnson found a reason to walk away. Then one evening, everything changed. Michael called from his business trip. Amara smiled when she heard his voice. How are you feeling? I'm fine. She wanted to tell him. She wanted to explain everything, but before she could, Mrs. Johnson entered the room. Amara looked at her and suddenly she lost courage. I'm okay, she told Michael. After the call ended, Mrs. Johnson looked at her. You should have told him. Amara was confused. Told him what? The truth. What truth? Mrs. Johnson's face became serious. That you cannot give him what he needs. Amara felt a painful silence. What are you talking about? A son. Amara couldn't believe what she was hearing. So you think my daughter is not enough? Mrs. Johnson didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, Michael deserved better. The words broke something inside Amara. She had tried. She had respected this woman. She had treated her like family. But now she understood. Mrs. Johnson never wanted to accept her. She only tolerated her because she was Michael's wife. That night, Amara made a decision. She would protect her child, even if it meant standing alone. But she didn't know that Mrs. Johnson had already made her own decision, a decision that would change Amara's life forever. Because while Michael was away, Mrs. Johnson was preparing to do the unthinkable. Amara thought she had already experienced the worst. She thought the painful words from Mrs. Johnson were the hardest thing she would have to face. But she was wrong because Mrs. Johnson was not finished. She had made up her mind. She believed Amara had failed her family by carrying a baby girl, and she was determined to make sure Michael knew it. A few days later, Amara woke up feeling exhausted. Her pregnancy was becoming more difficult. She was getting closer to her delivery date, and all she wanted was peace. But peace was the one thing Mrs. Johnson refused to give her. That morning, Amara walked into the living room and saw Mrs. Johnson sitting with a serious expression. There was a small bag beside her. Amara immediately felt uneasy. "Good morning, Mrs. Johnson." Older woman did not respond warmly. Instead, she pointed at the bag. "Pack your things." Amara froze. "What?" Mrs. Johnson looked at her coldly. "You heard me. Pack your things and leave this house." For a moment, Amara thought she was joking. She stared at her mother-in-law, waiting for a smile, but there was none. "Mrs. Johnson, I don't understand." "You understand perfectly." Amara's eyes filled with confusion. "But I am your son's wife." Mrs. Johnson laughed bitterly. "My son married you, not me." The word cut deeply. Amara touched her stomach. "I am pregnant with your grandchild." Mrs. Johnson's face remained emotionless. "A grandchild I don't even know if I want?" Amara felt like the ground disappeared beneath her. She could not believe what she was hearing. "My child has done nothing wrong." Mrs. Johnson stood up. "The problem is not the child. The problem is you." Amara shook her head. "No, the problem is that you wanted a boy." Mrs. Johnson became angry. "Watch your words." "I have watched my words for months," Amara replied. "I respected you. I treated you like my own mother, but you have never accepted me." For the first time, Mrs. Johnson looked surprised, but instead of apologizing, she became even colder. "You are too emotional because of pregnancy. You need to leave before Michael comes back." Amara's heart raced. "Michael would never allow this." Mrs. Johnson smiled. "Do you really think he will believe you over his mother?" That sentence scared Amara because deep down she wondered the same thing. Michael loved her, but Michael also respected his mother, and Mrs. Johnson knew exactly how to control him. Amara picked up her phone and called Michael. Her hands were shaking. When he answered, she immediately wanted to tell him everything, but before she could speak, Mrs. Johnson interrupted. Tell him you are leaving because you don't respect this family." Amara looked at her in shock. She realized what was happening. Mrs. Johnson was creating a story before she could tell the truth. "Michael," her voice broke. "Your mother wants me to leave." There was silence. Then Michael spoke. "What happened?" Amara looked at Mrs. Johnson. She wanted to explain. She wanted to tell him everything. But before she could continue, Mrs. Johnson started crying loudly. Amara watched in disbelief. Mrs. Johnson had suddenly become the victim. "Michael," she said through tears, "I have tried my best with your wife, but she doesn't appreciate anything I do." Amara's heart sank. She couldn't believe how quickly the situation changed. Michael became quiet. He didn't know who to believe. After the call ended, Amara sat down and cried. She felt completely alone. The woman she respected wanted her gone. The man she loved was miles away, and the child inside her was the only reason she refused to give up. That evening, Mrs. Johnson packed Amara's belongings. She placed her bags near the door. "By tomorrow morning, you should be gone." Amara looked around the house. The same house where she had imagined raising her children. The same place where she believed she belonged. Now she was being thrown out like a stranger. That night, she slept on the couch because she couldn't stop crying. She held her stomach and whispered, "Don't worry, my baby. Your mother will protect you." The next morning, with tears in her eyes, Amara carried her bags outside. She had no idea where she would go. She had no idea what would happen next. But she knew one thing: the woman who promised to welcome her into the family had become the person who destroyed her peace. And as Amara walked away from that house, Mrs. Johnson believed she had won, but she had no idea that the woman she has pushed away was about to discover her own strength. Amara walked away from the house with tears in her eyes. Every step felt heavier than the last. She had imagined leaving the house many times, but never like this. Not while pregnant, not with nowhere to go, not after being treated like she meant nothing. She sat on a bench near the roadside, holding her bags tightly. For the first time in her life, she felt completely lost. The woman who had supposed to welcome her as a family had pushed her away, and the man who promised to protect her was not there. But then she looked down at her stomach. She placed her hand gently on her baby, and she remembered something. She was not alone. She had a child who needed her, a child who deserved a mother who would fight. So Amara wiped her tears and made a decision. She would not allow anyone to break her. After hours of thinking, Amara called an old friend, Sarah. Sarah was shocked when she heard what happened. Amara, why didn't you call me earlier? Amara couldn't answer. She was too ashamed. She didn't want anyone to know that her marriage was falling apart. Sarah immediately welcomed her into her home. For the first time in days, Amara felt safe. She rested, she ate properly, and she focused on preparing for her baby. But life was not easy. Without Michael's support, everything became difficult. Medical appointments, baby expenses, daily needs, everything became a struggle. But Amara refused to go. She remembered the small business she once started before marriage. She began making handmade baby items and selling them online. At first, only a few people bought from her. Then more customers came. Slowly, the small business started growing. People loved her work. They loved her story. And little by little, Amara started rebuilding her life. Meanwhile, Michael was still away. He had no choice what was truly happening. Mrs. Johnson continued telling him a different story. She told him Amara was disrespectful. She told him Amara left because she didn't want to live with his family. She made him believe that she was the victim. But something started bothering Michael. The more he thought about it, the more things stopped making sense. He knew Amara. She was not someone who would walk away without a reason. Then one evening, Sarah accidentally posted a picture online. It was Amara sitting in her home, heavily pregnant. The caption said, "Some women go through storms and still choose to stand." Michael saw the picture. His heart sank because he realized something. Amara was suffering and he was not there. Michael immediately called Amara. When she answered, there was silence. Amara, her voice was quiet. Michael, he could hear the pain in her voice. "Why didn't you tell me?" Amara laughed sadly. "I tried. I called you, but your mother had already told you her version." Michael became silent because he knew she was right. For the first time, he questioned everything. Michael returned home earlier than planned. The moment he entered the house, he confronted his mother. "Where is Amara?" Mrs. Johnson looked surprised. "Why are you asking me?" "Because she was living here with you." Mrs. Johnson became defensive. "She left because she wanted to." Michael shook his head. "No, I spoke to her. She said you forced her out." The room became quiet. Mrs. Johnson tried to explain, but Michael was no longer listening. Then he noticed something, a small baby blanket sitting on a chair, the same blanket Amara had bought before she left. And suddenly he remembered how excited she was, how happy she was, how much she wanted this family, and he realized his mother had taken that away from her. Days later, Michael went to find Amara. When he saw her, his heart broke. She looked tired but stronger. She was no longer the woman who begged to be accepted. She was a woman who had survived. "I'm sorry," Michael said. Amara looked at him. "I should have protected you. I should have believed you." Amara looked away. "I needed you when I had nothing, and you weren't there." Michael had no excuse because she was right. A few weeks later, Amara went into labor. Michael stayed beside her throughout the delivery. After hours of waiting, the baby's cry filled the room. The doctor smiled. "Congratulations, you have a healthy baby boy." Michael looked at Amara. Both of them were speechless. A boy? The child Mrs. Johnson wanted so badly. But Amara did not smile because it was a boy. She smiled because her child was healthy. When Mrs. Johnson heard the news, she rushed to the hospital. She expected Amara to welcome her. She expected anyone to forget what happened. But when she arrived, she saw something. Amara was surrounded by love. Michael was standing beside her, and their baby was in their arms. For the first time, Mrs. Johnson realized what she had lost. She had been so focused on wanting a grandson that she almost destroyed her relationship with her family. Mrs. Johnson apologized. She admitted that she was wrong. She admitted that she cared too much about tradition and not enough about love. Amara listened, but forgiveness was not immediate. She had been hurt deeply. She needed time. Michael also made a promise. He would never allow anyone, not even his own family, to disrespect his wife again. Months later, Amara and Michael built a new home together, a home filled with love. Their daughter was adored, their son was celebrated, and Amara became successful through her business. The woman who was once thrown out while pregnant became the woman everyone respected. Mrs. Johnson eventually became part of their lives again, but things were different. She learned a painful lesson. A family is not built by names, not by traditions, not by having a certain child. A family is built by love. And the child she once rejected became the reason she finally understood that, because the woman she thought she could destroy became the woman who proved everyone wrong.